Welcome to AU Manufacturing Conversations with Brent Belinsky. Ready to take your manufacturing to the next level? Today's sponsors, ECI Software Solutions, offer Australian manufacturers a simple solution to make the most of their machinery. Users of ECI's Allura Machine Intelligence have seen an average of $20,000 saved per machine within a few weeks. To find out how you can create immediate improvements on your machine performance, head over to ECI's website. Simply Google ECI Allura or use the link in this episode's bio. Now on with the show. Maryam, welcome to AU Manufacturing Conversations.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to have this chat with you.
Pleasure all mine. So let's start with the standard opener, and that is, how did you get here and what do you make?
So I'm the CEO and co-founder of SDIP Innovations, and we work on next generations of bioresobable bone implants, basically the implants that can hold the bone in place and convert to bone. So my background is biomedical engineering. Then I worked as quality engineer part-time before I start my PhD at UNSW. And before actually I moved to Australia to do my PhD at UNSW. I did my PhD working on cell screening and implant that basically were designed to look at cell responses to different drugs, basically for personalized medicine and how you make sure you prescribe the best medicine for each patient. So that was the PhD project at UNSW. And then I moved to UTS, where I worked in an industry-sponsored biomedical engineering research institute. And that was the opportunity of working 50-50 between university and two other startups that I worked with. So that was the ignition of being interested really in the startup worlds. That became really serious after I took the medical devices commercialization training program sponsored by New South Wales Health back in 2017, which was managed by SDIP Innovations at Australian Technology Park. So that was really a mini MBA designed, and still is going on the program, designed for scientists and clinicians to learn the commercialization language. So I took that course, still nothing serious in terms of opening our own startups, but I also worked for some time in research management office at UNSW, helping academics to get funded for their research. And during this time, I was working with my co-founder who was developing bioresorbable biomaterials at that time for children applications. So he was watching children coming back all the time for repetitive surgeries at Westmead Children's Hospital. And that was his idea to develop bioresorbable implants to avoid repetitive surgeries, basically, especially for kids. So I teamed up with him. He took the same course that I did, New South Wales Health sponsored by medical devices commercialization program. It's a hard name to say. And then we kind of started working on this as full-time when we got 50K seed funding from SDIP Innovations during MedLab program. So it was accelerator program for 6 medical devices companies, and we were one of them. So we started the company. We went through this incubator accelerator program. We also got a scholarship from New South Wales Health, which was in partnership with QB3 Incubator and UCSF Rosenman incubators in Bay Area in the US. So that enabled us, me, my co-founder, we committed to that scholarship. We moved from Australia to the US. We were based there nearly 3 years, again, working on different aspects of business, came back to Australia and started our own, basically, manufacturing side. And now we work on making different type of bone fillers, pre-regulatory yet, and also working on research and development in other fields of orthopedic applications that are relevant.
Right, that brings us up to speed. You've mentioned in passing a couple of times the resorbable bone implant solution that you're developing and that had its origins at a children's hospital. Could you tell us a little more about Jazbi, please? What's it made of? How does it work? Yada, yada, yada.
Yay. So Jazbi is basically a biomaterial platform. So a material made of a mixture of polymers and ceramics, basically, that works as a scaffold. So it holds the bone in place. So mechanically it can become that ideal place for bone to start making new bone, because our bone is really amazing. It can regenerate itself if we provide the right environment for them. So Jazbi is that right environment that enables new bony tissue to be generated. So it holds the bone in place, and then as the new bone is generated, Jazbi goes away. So the whole implant gets replaced by the new bone. So basically acting like a scaffold for the new bone to does the natural job that it can do.
And so injuries, missing bits of bone, these are an old problem. There are some solutions out there of various kinds, bone grafts, other ceramic type materials. What are you trying to improve on?
So right now, 60% of surgeons use bone from another part of the patient's body to fill the gaps in the bone, or from cadaver models, which involves, as you can imagine, in opening another surgery site in the patient's body to take the bone, and also more of the surgery time. Also, when they get it from cadaver model, it's lots of cutting, measurements, chance of disease transmission between two species, basically. But the synthetic bone fillers come to play. The reason why we still have 60% of surgeons using bone from another part of the patient's body is because we don't have that optimum synthetic bone filler in the market. The ones that are purely ceramic, they're good in terms of bone conversion because they provide the calcium, the phosphate, the food that bone needs for regeneration. What they don't provide is the mechanical biocompatibility, mechanical compatibility for the cells. So they don't provide that structural integrity that cell needs for an efficient bone conversion to create a quality new bone. Basically, what you need is not just something that is compatible. It's not just something that provides bone regeneration, but also you need mechanically, you need an environment that provides bone with what they used to have. So the more similar you can be to natural bone in terms of providing that scaffold, the more successful you will be. You cannot purely do that by ceramics because they are brittle. So if you put a piece of ceramic and you just smash it with a hammer, boom, it just turns to powder. If you put Jazbi and you smash it with a hammer, it just comes back to the shape that it was. So when you feel it, you can see it's bendable, it's shapeable sort of thing, but also it has the same food, the same ingredients that cell likes for regeneration. So the difference is in a structural integrity that Jazbi can provide, meaning that potentially it can provide better quality of bone, faster recovery for patients, and also because of that shapeability. So I think I invented that word.
No, I think it's out there.
Okay. So we have Jazbi in different shapes. So it comes in granules, in wedge, in rod shape. And also we have the delivery kit where Jazbi cartridge, basically Jazbi filler in shape of the rod, comes with a delivery device where surgeon put the cartridge inside the delivery device, and they can immediately, in matter of a few minutes, can access different variety of size and shape of bone filler, which is basically comes back to the shapeability. You cannot do that with ceramic, for example. And that's possible because of the properties of Jazbi as a material, as a biomaterial. So it comes down to structural integrity. It comes down to the ability to provide variety of size and shape and enabling surgeons to innovate during the surgery, which potentially means saving them time 15 to 20 minutes during 1 hour of operation, which is like 15 to 20% potentially.
And so, obviously, you're not here to give away trade secrets or anything of that kind, but can you give us kind of a rough overview of what it's made of and how it's made?
We've been using traditional manufacturing methods to make Jazbi simply because thinking about the scale-ups, if we want big players to merge and help us in marketing, they have the infrastructure in place. So we've been basically using traditional machineries, molding, mixing, these sort of techniques to make Jazbi. And the main structure has different ingredients. We have parts that are responsible for bone regeneration mainly, which is mostly the ceramic part. We have parts that are responsible for structural integrity, which is the bioresorbable polymer, mix of polymers that we have. And also that part is the part that provides that flexibility that I talked to you about, like the shapeability. And also, when it comes to the delivery device application, the property that the material has makes it suitable to be basically molded using a handheld delivery device by surgeon.
Right. And we were talking earlier about the delivery device and that being a bit like a hot glue gun, if you will, and that's a term we can sort of relate to immediately. However, that's a little further off. Tell me about your upcoming products and how far they are from clinical acceptance.
So the first product, the first intention for use are the bone fillers that come in different shape. And that we've done for granules, for example. We've done all the studies required by FDA. We put in the technical file together to submit that for regulatory approval. Down the track, we have the delivery kit, which is the delivery device and the cartridge. So the cartridge is basically similar formulation to the pre-shaped bone fillers, but the cartridge and the delivery device is a kit. So that's another, I would say, 18 months before regulatory submission, but we have made very successful prototypes out of that, and our clinician champions love just testing the prototypes. And also, because it's a platform application, potentially it can be used for screw and pin applications. That was actually how we started the whole journey. But that's, how everything has its own complications in terms of manufacturing, regulatory. So I would say the pre-shaped bone fillers is the first in the row, then it's the delivery kit. And then everything else has been just made in terms of just a prototype, in terms of screws and pins.
Right. If you had to guess, when do you think the bone fillers might be in a patient's body?
Yeah, that should be next year, hopefully.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're making this bone substitute available in various forms, and it's getting to surgeons, they're using it. What's the business model look like? What are you're making a thing, it's ending up at a patient. What happens in between, and how are you making money off it, basically?
That's a great question, because not all of us are familiar with the business model that medical devices work on. And I think it's really helpful for the whole society to have the basic knowledge on how the manufacturing and that business model of medical devices work differently from other industries. Obviously, there are people who know it much, much better than me. But I can talk about like Jazbi in particular and orthopedic implants. So you cannot sell medical devices before you have the regulatory approval. But you have to manufacture it in your finish line to be able to do the testings that regulatory bodies require. You cannot change a bit of your packaging, a bit of a sterilization method, a bit of your formulation after you received your regulatory without applying for another regulatory approval or at a minimum notifying the regulatory bodies. So you need all those resources not only for the product development, but also to get your product to finish line in terms of manufacturing, packaging, sterilization, get the regulatory approval. Now you are able to sell. So it just makes it a long journey where you need savvy investors who have understanding of it's going to be a long journey. They usually invest knowing that it's not going to be a fast return. And also you need a lot of times government support and society support, angel investors, people who not do it just for money, but also for the impact, basically.
to rewind a bit and think about your time in the Bay Area on the scholarship. You would have made, many very useful, very intelligent connections there. Did you ever give consideration to not bringing the business back to Sydney? Was there ever temptation to think, oh, well, we're kind of established in a little way here and we have investor support. Why don't we just relocate?
Obviously, that has come to the mind. So for me, it's been moving between continents in terms of improving the business, making the idea work. So that has come to the mind that what is the best for business, isn't it, to stay here? Because we have the whole team of advisors and clinician champions that we got the opportunity to connect with and bring to the team while we were in the Bay Area, and we probably couldn't do that if we were not physically there in the first place. So we have people like Fred Dinger, clinician champions like Mohammed Diab, who is the head of orthopedic at Benioff Children's Hospital. I think one thing that really helped was COVID, because we were physically and in person in touch with these people who were revolutionizing the business model. The first application, the team development, the IP, and then suddenly we were in the same place, but we were connecting with them via Zoom. So when it came to make the decision to move here, I think just being used to virtually connect with each other helped a lot, because it just made us not to be scared of being far, even though we travel to date quite frequently to keep the connections, to make sure they touch the prototypes, etc. But I think the factor that really was playing the role on coming back was, I cannot say that R&D tax incentives were not influencing. It's 43%. So just being in a startup, that can be your half shelf life, almost. So that was a factor. The other factor is we also were really well connected in Australia before we moved to Bay Area in terms of relationship with government, with universities, with some of high net worths back in Australia. So it was also a factor for coming back to Australia. But honestly, also family-wise, we migrated once. I migrated from Iran to Australia, so I call it home. Going to America, it was 100% great for a startup, for the business. But also you need to make sure that you have a sustainable model that works for family and business, so you can do it long term. Yep. I would say we chose Australia to basically for our kids to go to school. So that was a factor as well. The quality of research, the quality of people we connect with here, it's great. Are we as experienced in Australian system in startups as US is? Obviously not. We have a long way to go to get that culture, to reach that ecosystem that is very dynamic there for startups. Lots of handing helps are there, lots of communities that you can easily become part of. But what we have been trying to do is to keep those connections, but also take advantage of what Australia has to offer in terms of quality of research, quality of connections, R&D tax incentives, government support. We got Medical Devices Fund back in 2020. We got it again in 2023. So having these governmental supports have been also really influential in motivating us to keep the IP in Australia, bring the business back to Australia.
And we are in Hornsby at your factory.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. It's quite something to see downstairs, the redeployable clean room that you guys have built. Tell me about setting up here, please. Your choice to do so, over what time it happened, and what you've done to make this factory, I guess, your second home.
Yes, so for founders making the decision, because we are living on really limited cash, and cash is oxygen for startups. So making the decision that whether I need to spend it on making in-house manufacturing or not, most of the times it's not the right decision to spend the money early days on making your own manufacturing site. In our specific case, we did a very comprehensive search and business model basically evaluating to ensure that this is the best for us. Initially, we were thinking of doing contract manufacturing, but having our own machineries where each bit was from Germany, from US, having these big machines that needed to go inside someone else's killing room, come out the next day, taking powders to killing room, all of that, when it came to practice, became either impossible or really costly with other manufacturers. So we had conversations, I would say, with maybe all possible contract manufacturing sites in New South Wales. At the time, we made that like big Excel sheet, how much it's going to cost, how time consuming is that. We did that really fast. The whole thing from starting the conversations with these guys to the point that we were looking for our own warehouse was less than 2 months, while we were ordering things that we knew that we need anyway. So we needed a place for our people, for me, my co-founder, to work together in person, because that's something that specifically is important in our business model and in our case. We needed a R&D lab space because we keep innovating. We are, after all, inventors, scientists, so we needed a lab to keep innovating. We needed to keep the IP close. So for us, it would be, I need the lab, I need the office, and I'm going to do contract manufacturing somewhere else. How I'm even going to distribute my human resources? So putting all of that together, managing human resources, managing IP, keep innovating, how to keep it cost effective, we came to the decision that we establish our own manufacturing. But I also need to mention we had the prior knowledge in the team. So my co-founder, Iman, had previously established factories back in Iran for making disinfectants, hand sanitizers, basically. And also we saw the model of establishing manufacturing sites with control size with our advisors in San Antonio in the US. Gabby and Mark did that in the past, and we visited them a couple of times. So having that background knowledge, having enough business reasons and business resources, we got this manufacturing place as you visited just today. And then we brought in the clean rooms that we needed, we brought in the machineries that we needed. Before all of these, we did one important step that I think a lot of time we as founders underestimate, and that's the manufacturing process development. So we did that 3 months with Bay Material, a company based in Bay Area, just using their machineries, their facilities, which is not for medical device application, non-killing facility used for other purposes that we use to make sure which machines worked for us, which parameters, what's the square meter that we need, how big our clean rooms need to be. So we did all of those evaluations before we actually spent money on renting a place, building the clean rooms, buying the machineries.
So you would say, I guess, by extension, it's good advice for a founder of a medical device company to consider manufacturing process development from a very early stage and to get some advice from someone who's doing it.
Exactly, especially when it comes to biomaterials and hardware medical devices. I think that's a must.
Obviously, the topic of fundraising, high-tech manufacturing is out there and something that people are talking about, and not always in positive terms, though.
Yeah.
How have you found it raising money here for what you're doing, and do you have any comments on the environment?
Yeah, tricky question. It's really hard for medical device companies to raise substantial amount of money from investors in Australia. And the reason is because we still have our lessons to learn as a new society in terms of founders, but also in terms of investors. So they have a longer history of doing this, for example, in the US. And I would say we are more new into this. For investors, it comes all down to ROI, return on investment. How much I'm putting in, how much I'm taking out, in how long. And when you look at the medical, even device companies, you have to look at even if you want to be a public company, even if you have the ambition of becoming a standalone company that sells 100 different type of products, when it comes to investors early days, you have to think about what similar companies have been acquired for or merged for in the past. So that's how the investors usually calculate the return on investment. And when they do that, it's similar to making a house. Let's say you have the knowledge on how to make a house, you have the land, you think that it takes 1 million to build this house, and you think that you're going to sell it for 5 million, right? So for an investor to come in and give you that 1 million and let's say take 5x return, that means they need to own 100% of that company, 100% of that. So the founder has no stake in the game. Let's say they put 1 million and they want just 3x return. So that means they, at the end of the day, they need to own 3 out of 5, which is like 60% of the company. So with all of that, I want to get to the point that for medical device companies and investors, it's a tricky calculation. If it's purely based on return on investment and not the impact that medical device companies can make in the society, in patients' life, then it's really an art on how to raise money, when to raise money, and what percentage to give up. Because if you just think about even 5x of return for investors, early days you have to give most of the company, a substantial percentage of the company away, which is okay in terms of financial probably, because a lot of founders have they do it for their passion, but also it's just you give away the control, the inventors probably go away before the product gets into so many patients' bodies, maybe a few, but not many. So it's really tricky, the knowledge of how to invest and how to raise when you are dealing with the hardware medical device companies. Usually a gradual injection of money for hardware medical device companies, especially in orthopedic, has worked the best in the past when we look at examples. But in Australia, the VCs sometimes intend to put a big money in one go, which just doesn't make it work. So I think the art of investing in orthopedic medical device companies, let's be really specific, is something that we are all learning in Australian environment. And that's what makes it tricky sometimes to raise money in Australian environment from VCs for this field. So if we look at the number of companies that have hardware medical devices and have been able to raise money from VCs at the right time, as you said, it's not really happy news.
Sure.
Yeah.
One of the reasons we are in contact is because you guys were part of our 50 Most Innovative Manufacturers campaign, which was quite recent and you did quite well.
Thank you. That was a huge achievement for us.
Yeah, well, you're doing good work and the judges thought so as well. On that topic, I'd like to get your personal definition of innovation, please.
I think in terms of innovation in manufacturing, usually manufacturing is a conventional industry, right? So doing innovations in terms of how you do things differently but more efficiently, I think that's quite a fun part. For example, for SDIP, our art is also that we can do lower scale manufacturing. For example, we have a mix and melt machine that I just showed you that can go down to 30 grams. So that's an art when a company wants to do manufacturing process development, but also when you are dealing with delicate products in medical device areas. It can go up to couple of kilograms, but it can also go down to 30 grams. So I would say that our innovation is that we can really go low scale, but also we can go high scale and we can expand our manufacturing. For example, the mobile clean room, ISO 7 clean room that you saw downstairs, we can have it in outside area, we can have it inside area because it has embedded HVAC system, which is connected to nowhere outside except for the 3-phase electricity. But we also have the ability to connect a couple of them. So I would say the innovative part is that we have built it based on a startup model. So it can go really low scale and it can expand to really go highest scale of manufacturing. So I would see the innovation in that part. I don't know what judges said, but that's my takeaway if I want to highlight just one thing in our manufacturing site.
Well, you mentioned the importance of being able to go from very small to very large scale production, and obviously you're able to do that because you hope to one day get to pretty decent volumes and to make an impact with what you've invented. I'd like to know something about your ambitions, please. Where do you see, I guess, the company in a few years? Tell me about that.
We love to double, triple our manufacturing capacity, as we are very close to receiving our first regulatory approval. That means after that we can sell the product first in the US market. And our ambition is to, as we have the IP in Australia, we have started this manufacturing facility in Australia to keep everything here and exporting to the US. So that's the ambition. Keep it local, but really go global at the same time. So I think that's big enough, and that's really keeps us busy at the moment, just planning for that.
I guess an issue worth talking about might be the attraction of the right types of skills for a company that's doing fairly novel, fairly niche, and based on a lot of IP and just difficult stuff, as my idiot's understanding has it. Tell me about finding the right people for the job.
Definitely a challenge, finding the right people for the job, right talent, attracting them to small to medium-sized companies. It's really challenging, finding people that have a specific knowledge on ISO 13485, medical devices manufacturing, have attention to details, have ideally tertiary educations. It's been just really hard to find those talents and attracting them. It's been really challenging. So I would say that when it comes to manufacturing, attracting talents, the right talents, finding the right skilled people is challenging. So a lot of times we actually spend a lot of time on training people that have the potential, have the background knowledge, but they don't have the exact same experience in similar industries.
Right, and so I believe that's about everything I'd like to talk about, and you've been quite generous with your time, but it's not infinite. If there's something you'd like to mention in closing, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we can call that a wrap and say goodbye.
Thank you so much. And I believe what you do is quite unique. With Australia manufacturing, I was in the events in the pub with you where you're bringing in people from Roman engineering, people from different manufacturing that usually those people in traditional and conventional manufacturing, they don't get much of chance to be in events, communities, and for us to meet them as, I'm not that young, but as a new young people who are entering the manufacturing world, I think you are just facilitating that community, that coming together. I found it really fascinating, and I recommend people coming to those events. It's very casual, it's very fun. Have a drink, meet experienced people who probably are doing manufacturing as third generation, second generation. Meet them, use their experience, probably partner with them. So just having something like this for manufacturing, which is conventionally assumed as a traditional industry, I think is quite innovative. We have things going on in incubators for commercialization of medical devices, regulatory stuff like that, marketing. But on manufacturing, I don't know any other places where startups really can get connected to big manufacturers in a relaxed, fun environment. So thanks for organizing all those events that I'm sure people can find. I found it on your LinkedIn pages, so I'm sure people can find them. So thanks for bringing the community together.
Thanks for the kind words. You mentioned the word community a couple of times, and that's something that we're really happy to facilitate, and it's a real joy and a privilege to be able to do that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the end of the conversation. Maryam, thanks for being on AU Manufacturing Conversations and for having me in your factory.
Thank you.